Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the USL show. We are back a day late, and if you are someone who is on they like to be involved with the live streams, we're a day late. If you're just a podcast person, you're like, okay, we're just late again, which both are true. So, that said, it is League One preview time. Half the clubs to, cover, but I'm still hosting this, so it'll still be as long as Dune 2, which is where Phil is. But hey, it's fine. As for someone who is here, John, how you doing, man?
Yeah, doing really well. Sad that I missed the championship discussion, but I am amped to talk League One. Like, huge year coming up. I can't believe that the season is like 3 days away. That seems really fake, but
Yeah.
I'm hyped for it.
I don't want to give too hot take too early talk about it. I hate week 0. I hate that not every team is playing.
The fact, like in the championship, I think
Yeah.
6 or 8 teams have buys. Rhode Island has a buy in their possible first week. Like, what's up with that, schedule makers?
Whatever. It's fine. It's okay. It's a small thing
You're
to
fine.
complain about. With all the good things that are going on, me complaining about a week 0 is definitely on lower on the totem pole. But here I am. I mean, it does make our life easier. We can watch more of the games without stressing out about it. But also, I don't know. I'm a junkie and I miss it
Yeah, give me
until
every
I,
team.
yeah, until I get to week 24 and I'm like, Jesus Christ, when are the playoffs here?
Yeah, I mean this last Saturday was kind of the last time I'm going to be free on a Saturday night until November. So
Super League, you don't get another week.
yeah, don't say that.
Well, look, we are here to preview USL League One. There are a lot of people who do really good work, so I'm just going to go ahead. Is Rhode Island? I think they're going to have the stadium ready. Maybe we'll
I think
find
they're
out.
playing in an existing venue this year
Okay,
at a minimum, with
makes
plans
sense.
to expand. Yeah.
Makes sense. So there's a lot to cover. Listen, League One under the sea, walking 90. League One updater, League One review with the new podcast with Brandon May, which that one's super exciting. Um, am I going to wait the whole podcast to get to Lexington? Yes, because we are going to do it like we did last week, where we are starting from the bottom to the top. There's a lot of interesting conversations at the quote unquote bottom, including some places where I think the fans got it way wrong. So we'll get to that when we get to that. Super excited to talk about it. I'm super excited just to chat. It's going to be a lot of fun. League One is here. And if you're a championship person that listens to us, because we are championship heavy, you should watch League One. It is at times much more fun than the championship. How many 9-10 goal thrillers did we get last year? Like,
Tons of them.
yeah.
This is a league where, because you play so much, there feels like very natural rivalries that have developed across the board. That's something that can really get you invested as a fan. The level of play is pretty much indiscernible from the championship if you're concerned about that. Tons of fun. I know we're going to hit on lots and lots of detail, but yeah, League One is worth your attention.
Before we get 5 minutes into this, because I'm already just yapping, that's what I do. I want to just go ahead and thank our patrons: John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Aaron J, Christopher Cohn, Harry Austin, John Fuller, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, and Noah Telford. Thank you for supporting us. This month, we are going to be taking the proceeds from our patron that you guys gave to us, and we are going to be giving it to Backyard Footy along with our donations with our kits. We want to make a big, big impact, and you're changing lives. You're legitimately changing lives, not just ours, but people in the community. So thank you all for being patrons. That is going to be in the description, and I'll eventually spam it in the chat as well. So please consider donating the $5, even if it's just one time. But if you don't, share it around. And hey, speaking of the Carolinas, Charlotte, they're up there. But also, hey, speaking of Charlotte, Hugh Roberts also went back there. We're going to talk about that. Brandon Miller, he has a thing, prime focus goalkeeping. Heard of it? He says best goalkeeping coaching in the Carolinas. Wrong. I will just go ahead and say the Southeast. It is good stuff. They have great videos and articles coming out. I've been nerding out over the articles that Prime Focus Goalkeeping been putting out. even if you're just someone who's kind of intrigued by what's going to, if you're just intrigued on like the basis of goalkeeping, check that out. But let's go ahead and get into this preview. And if you did not see what the fans voted, and I want to reiterate, this is a fan vote. This is not our personal vote. Our personal vote of both League One and the championship are going to be coming out later this week. But these are fan voted. So the order goes like this: number 1, Lexington; 2, Union Omaha; 3, Charlotte Independence; 4, Ford Madison; 5, Northern Colorado Hellstorm; Chattanooga Red Wolves, the 6; 7, which is the playoff line. It is the top 6. So anybody 7, top 8. So sorry. Thank you. 7, Greenville Triumph; 8, 1 Knox. That's the playoff line. Richmond Kickers at 9. South Georgia Tormenta at 10, Spokane Velocity 11, and Central Valley Fuego at the 12. We're going to start with Central Valley Fuego because their biggest offseason is their coach. Jermaine Jones is there. And John and I have already kind of talked about it just a little bit, but there is some real excitement for me, which there's maybe not their star signing, but he should be the star signing. Chris Heckenberg goes over to Central Valley Fuego, which I circled as a player that championship teams should have signed immediately as he was a free agent, and he makes his way over to Central Valley, which is massive pickup for Jermaine and co.
If you think about this Central Valley team, like they got, I think, 23 points last year, dead last by a mile. The coaching position was really a revolving door. There's nowhere to go but up if you're Fuego. So by going out and getting Heckenberg, going and getting Raul Mendiola, somebody who's got a ton of championship experience, came up in the LA Galaxy system, you put them with Jose Carrera Garcia in the middle, that's a 3-man midfield that can go toe-to-toe with basically any other midfield unit in League One. That's going to be the real engine for this team when you're thinking ahead to the year. The issue comes at pretty much every other position where I really don't trust a lot of what Fuego have. Like, there's a real lack of known quantities who can get the job done at this level. It's going to take some invention from Jermaine Jones in his first head coaching job to get this team to outperform what ultimately is a roster that's probably towards the lower end. So I tend to fall in with the voters who put this team last.
I get it, but doesn't it just feel like there's hope now?
Oh, for sure.
Like, and I understand that fans of Central Valley Fuego, they want to see a competitive team, but before you can see a competitive team, you need to see hope. Like, I don't want to make it too big of a comparison between Central Valley Fuego and Las Vegas Lights, but they were definitely two peas in a pod when you looked at consistently at the bottom, had no plan, you're confused. I think that we're going to see Fuego just be more consistent and have just a lot more hope going into this year. If they can just avoid the random PR issues that end up happening throughout the year, I think that's a positive year for Fuego because they have talented players. I mean, you mentioned the midfield 3.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say it's the best in League One because it's not, but you can have that conversation.
You could make that argument, yeah.
That's fun. Like, that is just fun.
I look at that defense and that goalkeeping position where in net, it's a Carlos Alvarez who's coming off a mediocre year in Chattanooga. It's Andre Zuluaga who couldn't even get minutes for a terrible Las Vegas Lights team. There's a college kid in the back line, Asha Pollen, who hasn't nailed down minutes in the championship at all in years. You've got Cromwell thoughts. Like, there's not a lot to inspire confidence. And then I know he's like the inside joke, but Kudus Lawal is the obvious number 9, and there's like no other striker on the roster. That's a little weird. I want to believe in this team, but I think Las Vegas, by comparison, has done a lot more to inspire confidence if you're looking for that comeback story.
You kind of mentioned Aviles, right? And he's a young player, and this is not me trying to be slag off League One, right? But the standard of, I don't want to say the standard of goalkeeping was bad last year, but the standard of just defense was not great last year. There were great defenses, but that wasn't a league wide trend. And so I think having a goalkeeper who's detrimental is not that bad if you are in the 6 to like 10 range where you're kind of fighting for the last few playoff spots. I really think that a good goalkeeper is really what you're looking at if you're a top 5 team in League One. So maybe that's not the worst thing. I think the biggest thing in a high scoring environment is who's going to be your scorer. And Lawal, yes, this is a big Lawal show, but that's not who you want to be relying on the goals for. But
Yeah.
yeah, the fans, which I will get graphics out for this later, maybe. Don't hold me to that. People said the Central Valley Fuego fans who responded to this said that they are mostly confident in this team. They feel like central midfield is the biggest strength, obviously. They feel like the biggest weakness is center back, which considering the fact that we didn't name center backs, yeah. Um, from there, and I lost my place. They are all confident in Jermaine Jones. They have 100% confidence in Jermaine Jones, which, kind of is what it is. I don't know. It's easy to say if you have confidence in him, but the fact that he has a vision, I think says a lot. And their fans say their expectation is to make the playoffs, which I know preseason is, the time for internal optimism, but I don't know. Funny from John Hunt, how bad do they have to be before Jones cuts the entire roster again? That was a wild clip that came out.
Stuff. Yeah, Jones on CBS just going off on Fuego.
He kind of wasn't wrong, but I'm shocked he said it.
You like the culture change at least.
True. Let's go ahead and go over to Spokane Velocity, where, listen, there's some fun players with Spokane, including the best attacking midfielder in the league.
Up for debate, yeah.
Up for debate. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of good players there. Spokane really, in my mind, went for these players in the championship didn't get the playing time they deserved, and we're going to give it to them here. And it's worked at times. And then there's other times I think League One teams found out why they weren't playing in the championship. And, this is something that, and I want to get the order on the Spokane Soccer Show. Or yes, thank you. Like them, Brandon Mays, they all talked about. I think this is a boom or bust team where I can see them finishing comfortably in the playoffs if those pieces hit. But these are a lot of mostly unproven professional talents that they could finish as low as 11th easily.
I have them sneaking into the playoffs when I'm thinking about this team. A lot of that comes down to the fact that I really like Lee Vaidman's vision as the manager at that club. He's somebody who did amazingly when he was called up to the job to take over on an interim basis in OKC. He had earned the head coaching job before they went on hiatus. I think he's very good defensively. He was an assistant under Ben Pierman last year for a reason. Even if I'm with you on the fact that the USL Championship droppers can be a bit of a hit or miss proposition, I think that they've got enough proven League One contribution that you can trust, whether that comes from a Derek Waldeck at left back, whether it comes from Heel in the central midfield. And then, like, you think about an Andre Lewis or a Colin Fernandez who is coming down. Those are guys who could contest for starting minutes in a solid championship team.
Yeah, for sure.
There are other players, if you think about like the Grayson DuPonts or the Morgan Hackworths, who weren't even seeing time at all. That's a little bit more of a question, but I think that they've got the spine that they're going to be solid at a minimum, and they're going to be in competition on that eight spot bubble.
The player for me that maybe this is unfair, But the player for me that I'm circling just to see what he is Josh Dawling.
Absolutely. Yep.
I have been in love with what he could be. And I've been dreaming about what he could be. And it just never happened. And I want to see if he can put it together with regular starting minutes. That's not Vegas.
I mean, he was lost at sea a lot of the time last season. And part of that comes down to the context of Vegas and New Mexico. But if there is a worry for me on this roster, it's probably the fact that nobody here is a real finisher. Like, they've got a lot of good options. They're going to get chances by way of that midfield. Not convinced they've got somebody to finish them off, but you can see a scenario where they're slowing the game down a bit, kind of grinding out results and trying to get those chippier wins.
I mean, we've already kind of beat around the bush. Luis Hill, and you mentioned creating chances. Is there a world where it's like a I'm gonna do it myself situation coming up? Because like the thing that you saw with him with Omaha, that he had amazing finishers above in front of him, but he was always in scoring positions. He just always seemed to find the final pass first. But there were times where he should have been selfish and finished the ball himself. Do you think this is a possible way forward for them?
Definitely. And I think that the more he asserts himself in that way, the more the defense has to collapse. Then you're opening up the room for the overlaps from Waldeck, the overlaps from Metaniri on the right side, somebody with like an MLS All-Star appearance in recent vintage. So yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like this team has a pretty high floor. I'm just not sold that they're going to really get into the mix, even if they do hit in a lot of ways.
And I know we just spoke about goalkeeping and what it is, what it isn't. Marinaccio, I I'm intrigued by him because he's been in a lot of places where it was shooting gallery, and so you expect him to concede goals, but he would make great saves and then let in stupid ones. And it was like, is that a side effect of being in a shooting gallery and eventually bend you will break? Or is it just one of those things that it's just a deficiency in his game?
He's not somebody that I'm especially sold on. I don't like their central defensive group very much at all. But I don't know. I just feel like the protection they're going to get from the midfield, the way that Bateman has shown he's able to organize a defense, that gives me enough confidence to feel okay about it.
Let's go on to South Georgia Tormenta, whom I went on the USL Show Twitter account fairly recently, and it what's gone on with Tormenta is really interesting. I mean, just 2 years ago, they went out and did a double. The women's and the men's won, USL championship in their own, respective leagues. And like every single player who was a part of that championship team either retired or champion or is a star somewhere else right now. And it feels like they kind of were left with some bits and bobs. And unlike previously, it doesn't feel like they've been able to replace via their own system. They've had to really go out and get League One free agents, which is a new adventure for Tormenta, and they've gotten some good players. The ones that I've circled, there's a couple of you got Drew Romig, Ford Parker, who both championship players who didn't really get a chance. Romig did, and then didn't, and then that was
You
weird.
were number one on the play Ford Parker bandwagon.
I was. I'm a big fan of what Ford Parker is. I think that he is a class shot stopper. Just got stuck behind that's a championship preview. No, I need to get that behind me. But look, like they've done some good stuff. To me, the one that I love the most is Lombardi coming and Doyle. Lombardi and Doyle, Connor Doyle, and I always forget his first name, Aaron Lombardi.
Aaron Lombardi, yeah.
That is a fantastic 1-2 punch to have there in your defensive midfield. slash left wing back situation, whatever you want them to be. Plus, Jake Dingler's still there. This is kind of working out to be a couple years ago Tormenta to me of we have a fantastic defense. The issue is you no longer have a Reading, Keziah Sterling.
Don't you keep spreading that misinformation.
What a stupid rumor. That's
Aggregator accounts just need to stop.
but you don't have, at least in my opinion, that bona fide finisher like we talked about with Spokane. But it feels like the other pieces along the way in the midfield and in the back are there. It's just who is going to be the goal scorer.
Yeah, I mean, this was a team that kind of got away from the identity last year. Like, it was very high event soccer. I think there were like more easily over 100 goals for and conceded. Like, Tormenta wasn't really able to control the tempo of the game in the way that they wanted to. I think that Doyle is somebody who can really set the tempo, and he's somebody that can distribute in a meaningful way that kind of changes up how Tormenta can break you down. For me, this season is going to hinge on the non-League One additions that they brought in. Like who of Tevio de Almeida, Sebastian Vivas is really going to break out and maybe give you some of that destructive presence in the midfield to replace Heckenberg, to give you some of the goal scoring in place of Sterling. I'm looking for someone like a Jackson Corey to really come alive on the wing as a scoring option. I think that if somebody like a Vivas can be more of a dummy runner, that with a Doyle in the midfield, with Pedro Fonseca distributing a little bit, getting those runs into the channels could be a valuable source of offense. So this kind of isn't your grandpa's Tormenta at this point. Like, this is no longer the team, as you mentioned, that won the title. So I'd look for them to really change it up a bit and try to experiment, try to grow into a League One that's changed since they were at the peak of their powers.
If I'm looking at this right, and maybe I'm missing someone, but I think Dangler is still the only player left from that team.
As best I can tell, off the dome. Yeah.
That's a lot of turnover from winning a championship 2 years ago. This isn't a 5 years ago championship. This is 2 years ago. And that's a lot. That's a lot of change. Now, you mentioned Jackson Corey. And if you are a championship person who has not watched League One and you want to see a 21-year-old who has a chance to be an Australian international, like legitimately has a chance to represent Australia on a national stage, that's Jackson Corey. He is fantastic on the wings. He can play left. He can play right. I think in a pinch he's gone up top before, but he is just a really, really good winger who scored, 7, 8 times last year and gave a handful of assists too. Like, he was, whenever Tormenta was going right, he was the center of it. He was the absolute center of it.
Yep, and he's got to keep up that level if this team is going to get back into the playoffs, which, by the way, I do see them getting into the postseason, so diverging from the fan vote once again.
So I didn't do this for Spokane, so I'm going to run down there and give this for Spokane, by the way, for all the Spokane people that have already clicked off of this. You already know what you voted for this. Just real quick, Spokane fans said that they are mostly confident in their roster. They said that their biggest strength is central midfield, and majority of them said that striker is their biggest weakness. Most people said they're mostly confident in Vitamin. And then some of them, about a third of them, said they expect to miss the playoffs, but 2/3 of them said that they were going to make the playoffs. South Georgia Tormenta. They are everybody who answered is completely neutral on this roster. They don't know if they're good or bad. They are just neutral. They believe that the biggest strength is at center back. I can see that. The biggest weakness is a 4-way tie. There's only like 6 options, and it's between center back, goalkeeper, forward, striker, and wing back. And here's what I'll say. And I think it's funny that somebody said that center back is their weakness, and majority of people said it was their strength. I always love when stuff like that happens. I agree with the forward and striker. I like their goalkeeping room. And there's a part of me that feels like Drew Romig could have been a goalkeeper if he was told that he could be the number one and wasn't just on thin ice all the time, because it felt like every time he was starting to play well, they would just rip the rug under him and said, hey, we're bringing in a 36-year-old that's bad.
It was constantly a tough position for him in Memphis, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot more consistency if he does end up in that starting job.
And then I'm a big Ford Parker guy. I think that he is a good goalkeeper. I think he should be in the championship personally. I think you're going to see growing pains from him because he hasn't gotten enough starting minutes. But if this is his chance to start, I like that. So I like what Tormenta has there. For what people think of Ian Cameron, it's mostly confidence. I think when you walk in with a roster that everybody says they're neutral on, I think saying that you're mostly confident in the coach, I think should probably go to all the way confidence. Because if you're saying that, yeah, we believe in this guy, but the roster is meh, probably means you do fully believe in him.
Yeah, so, that's a solid point. Yeah.
So I don't know. Unless you have anything else on Tormenta, let's go on over to Richmond, who, hey, they've returned to red. And let me tell you, I love when clubs say we will give the fans what they want. They've been begging for red kits for years, and guess what? They get the red kit. But right now, the fans think that they're going to be just missing out on the playoffs. But hey, they came in, they revamped the goalkeeping room, which is exciting. They added some fun pieces all around the team. But this is also still a Richmond team that is familiar from last year and is honestly pretty familiar from their Players Shield team, which you can make the argument of they're getting old or the league has already grown past that team's potential. But I also think that when you look at the players there, I mean, when in doubt, Terzaghi Golden Boot, like it's hard not to love it. How many teams have we mentioned now? All four, we said, hey, they don't really have a finisher. They don't have a goal scorer. Richmond has the best one in the league. So
at age 31, coming off a somewhat down year, you worry,
goals, by the way.
That's because his standard is absolutely absurd. But even if you think that Terzaghi is missing a step, bringing in Basua from Tormenta, that's an important move to be able to give yourself that plan B. You could go with two forwards if you want to. Moreover, they've got some improved service by way of Bill Hart, probably on the right, and Max Shenfield at left back, most likely. So Richmond added a couple of key pieces, like you said, reinvented the goalkeeping room. Overall, though, they've returned about 75-ish% of their minutes played from last season for a team that had 29 points in 32 games. I worry that, as you kind of posited up top, that maybe the league has passed this core by to a certain degree. And I have my doubts that Richmond did enough to kind of get back over that hump.
I think one thing we're seeing with League One, much more than the championship feels like it moves in tactical and just player personnel waves in 2 to 3 year increments. Like it feels like it takes really 2 to 3 years for things to fully get figured out and then move on. I think if you were to watch a match from this year, from last year, you're like, that's a completely different league from a different era. If you look at last year to the year before, it looks like it's a different league in a different era. League One changes so rapidly that I also just can't help but think, kind of fade the fade, that things change so fast that if 1 year something's out of style, the next year it's going to be a world beater again, because things change so fast.
No, I mean, I see that. I just feel like, given how League One is improving, the fact that the level of play rapidly getting better.
Yeah.
This team just feels a step behind. And that's not to say that they're going to be as bad as they were. Like, the changes have addressed major issues in this squad. It just doesn't feel like enough in some for my taste.
I think the biggest place that you're going to see an improvement is through Ryan Shello and Pablo Hara,
Yeah.
because I don't want to disparage a Rail Hawks legend, but Fitzgerald was okay at his best last year.
Yeah.
And
that's a solid point. Yeah.
even if they improve from, I always hate saying this because we are a very pro player on here, and I don't want to be too rude, but this feels like a situation of addition by subtraction. And I feel like they're going to have to improve off just a better goalkeeping room. You mentioned Bill Hart, which if you did not watch Bill Hart when he was at his absolute best, he was unstoppable. In Detroit, I feel like weirdly Detroit just was the wrong USL club for him to go to. It just didn't really feel like it fit him. And I don't even know if it didn't fit him, or if it was one of those situations of they just kind of moved him everywhere and he didn't really know where to go, like most of Detroit's midfield last year. And I just can't help but think that he just wasn't in the right situation. So now his stock's a little bit low and fans are kind of sleeping on him a little bit. Adrian Billhart is ridiculously good and was a key cog in that Tormenta team that won it all.
Yeah, I did a piece on League One players to watch where he was number one on the list. You think he's furious that he didn't win the comeback player of the year when it was sponsored by Tiger Ball?
Yes.
No, but in actuality, I think he's going to be a monster in Richmond. Like, he's the perfect fit for that team to, fit in and be that connector between the Vignals and the Terzaghi. He can play out wide. Detroit was a team that was so bad offensively that he never could settle into a spot as a contributor. At the League One level, he's going to be fringe all league at worst, most likely.
Yeah. I really don't think there's a whole lot here for me to mention outside of this. Anything else for you?
No.
Let's go ahead and go to One Knox. We are reaching the playoff
Did you
line.
get the survey stuff for Richmond?
Oh, dude, this is why I have you, is so I don't completely forget about everything. In the roster, we had half of the people said they're mostly confident, and half of the people said they're mostly unconfident. So cool. Half of our people said that center back is their biggest strength. Other people said forward, which again, when you have Terzaghi up there, it's hard.
Let me shout out Nathan Ane, who's just awesome at center back. We didn't mention his name, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Biggest weakness. Right now it says central midfield, which kind of hard to disagree with that. Like, it depends on if you think these guys can bounce back. Because if you think there's a bounce back in them, I think you believe. If you don't think there's a bounce back, you're saying it's a weakness, and I get it.
Yeah.
Going from there, how confident are you in Darren Sawatsky? Most people said they were mostly confident. A few people said they were kind of neutral, but mostly confident. And then half of the people said that they expect to miss the playoffs. The other half say that they're going to make the playoffs, which fits because they are right on the line. So I'm glad we are a self-aware group. So good on you, Richmond. Let's go over to One Knox, who, the question from John Hunt comes straight in. Where are the goals going to come from? And yeah, One Knox did the thing last year that we talked about with Spokane this year, kinda, is we're going to get championship guys who've just kind of fallen out of favor, and championship better than League One, right? So we're going to do well. And then League One kind of kicked them in the mouth. They still, I'm thinking anyway, they still have Sean Lewis, who, Golden Glove, still should be Golden Gloves. They wear two of them. And from there, you have players who have been there since League Two. You have players that are just coming in this year. You can talk yourself into one Knox, I think, pretty easily. But I also, this is my personal, I just don't believe.
If you're thinking about this team, they were tied with Fuego for having the worst offense in League One last year. At striker, they've added Kempis Tekiela, who had 20 goals in 2 seasons in Luxembourg. They've added Innocent Nishuti, who his goal scoring record is like not locatable because he was playing in Rwanda. Kingsford Ajay, I guess, gives you some burst on the wing. He's somebody with League One tenure, but like, why are you getting rid of Jake Keegan this late in the process if he is probably the guy on your roster who you're at least semi-confident is going to be able to score? On top of that, Waldeck is gone, and he was your best wide creator. And granted, he's been replaced by Devin Benton, who I really like. Richie Ballard is going to come in on the right side probably, just given where he's tended in the championship. Jimmy Villalobos is out in the middle, like, and then, oh, by the way, so that's a lot of meh. And then Sievert Hoagley coming into the defensive line, somebody who I thought was miserably bad in Phoenix, not to drag him. So I think this team is probably going to run with the back three again, like they sort of started last year. And I don't think they have the pieces to really do much damage in that shape. I'm kind of out on what One Knox did this winter.
I want to kind of talk a little bit. So what I understand, obviously, no naming anything like that, but like the whole situation when McKeever happened, right? And, apparently, the people who did the investigation were happy with how the league handled it, that things were handled the right way and it was fine. But when so it's already get brought up here. When you look at McKeever's kind of scandal, which if you don't know, basically just kind of verbally abusive and just a little hard on players, and there was a lot of just random people leaving last year and people they thought would stay forever, and then there were people who stayed, and it was bizarre to kind of read about that just kind of showed up out of nowhere. I think that this is something you have to look at is this offseason has been not good. They didn't really address any needs. In fact, they kind of got rid of needs out of nowhere, like you mentioned with Keegan. And now you have the kind of McKeever stench above it. This just feels like it was a rotten offseason for One Knox. The kid's nice, though.
Yeah, I mean, cling to that. They feel like a team that you could see it kind of blowing up pretty quickly. Like, their floor is low for my taste.
And yeah, and by the way, we are doing 12-1 order just like we did for the championship show. So that is what we are doing. Yeah,
sorry to our Spokane friends.
Yeah, you've already kind of missed us. Sorry. So I don't know. I just don't believe and I don't want to just keep rehashing it. I want to believe in it because there are pieces that you sit there like this makes sense. Which, by the way, you mentioned Richie Ballard. Like, where is he going to play? Because, like, my brain says right back, but also if they're running 3 back, I don't know. Are you relying on him being a right midfielder winger?
My sense, if I'm drawing up the lineup, is that you're probably going with Vanderpluim, Kelly Rosales. I think Charlie Mashel should start because he's really the only distributor, somebody who can hit a diagonal out of that midfield. So you've got that threesome. You're bombing Benton up the left, Ballard up the right, maybe Kingsford Ajay and somebody more physical alongside him. like there's a pathway where that works out. It just feels like there's a lot of contingencies and a lot of things that are going to have to go right for that team to be halfway decent offensively.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and go over to Greenville, who, hey, Greenville, they changed things. They have the new coach. They have new coach comes in. Old coach, still the same coach that was there before, but now it is just no longer Harks. But there's change in Greenville, and where some things change, some things stay the same. Like Tyler Pollock's still around. You have those guys who have just kind of stayed the test of time, but they've also revamped a lot here, and they've had a lot of change come through, and I like it. I really like it a lot. Do I think that they are host home playoff game material? I I don't think so. If you told me that it all clicked and it all went as well as it could, yes, there's a world for it. In the reality that I think is likely going to happen, I think they'll safely make the playoffs, and that's about it.
The thing for me is that, like, obviously the defense is probably going to be identical. They've returned 6 really important defenders. The pickups in that unit have been pretty tertiary. The goalkeeping spot could be an issue. Like losing Jared Mazzola, who earned that move up to the Sacramento Republic, and replacing him with Christian Garner, who could be good, but pretty much never appeared for the Riverhounds. That's something that could cost this team in a pretty meaningful way. I think this team will go as far as the new look forward line lets them, and as far as the midfield comes good. On paper, what you're getting from the championship players, the Sebastian Velasquez, Chapa Herrera, Carlos Anguiano group in the center, there's a lot of talent there. I don't necessarily know about the mix, given Velasquez's inconsistency over the last few years, the fact that Anguiano has never nailed down really serious minutes at any level. Given what Greenville does, I like the additions at forward. I think Ben Zakowski and Mohamed Sayeh are going to be good, especially coming out of the college ranks. Like McKinnon is due for a big year as well. There's just something holding me back, given the coaching change, given the loss in net, and some of just the massive changes that have gone on upfield that make me think that there's going to be a bit of a learning curve at a minimum.
I mean, if things all click and go well, I think you could say that midfield could be seriously loco.
I mean, just in terms of resume, yes. I'm not going to grant you that.
Sure. But yeah, I don't know. This is a team that's going to probably roll out their 3-4-3 and go from there. The player that I want to see, and this is a player that I was banging on the drum of last year too, and that's Daniel Wu. I think if he plays and he gets consistent playing time, I think he's easily one of the best center backs in the league. But there were times where he was just kind of dropped for reasons, and I didn't understand it. He's a good ball playing center back, and I don't know. I think that he could be a player that if he's allowed to play, he can really make that step.
I think he's somebody who's got the skill set to be an initiator out of the back, which is going to be important given the way that this midfield has been reinvented. Like when you're losing Devin Boyce, Lucas Coutinho, Gavilanes, Pilato, that's a lot of players who can do some damage with the ball at their feet in one way or another. And it almost, like, given what we know of Chapa Herrera, he's not that guy. Velasquez can be, but at this age, is he going to have the impact? So I think if Wu can step up and really kind of drive play from the back and be that quarterback in the center of the back line, that could be invaluable for Greenville.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to believe in Greenville, but there's also I don't know how much of that is believing in Greenville and how much of that is just I want Gio to be happy. I don't know.
Don't we all?
There's a big part of that. I don't know. Because I already forgot. I just want to go ahead pull up One Knox, as I don't know if you can hear my cat scratching in the background. Just know that he's an idiot. Um, One Knox says they are pretty neutral on this roster. They believe that center back and goalkeeper are the biggest strengths. The biggest weaknesses are the striker position. Half of the people said this is hilarious. Half of the people said they are fully 100% unconfident with Mark McKeever, and the other half said they're mostly confident with Mark McKeever. And then the one half of the people who filled it out said that they're going to miss the playoffs. The other half said they're going to host a playoff match. So thank you,
Top
one
four
knock.
bust, baby.
And Greenville, they said that they are mostly confident with the roster. They believe that center back is the club's biggest strength. They do believe that goalkeeper is the biggest weakness. And everybody's kind of neutral on Rick Wright because we don't really know. And I think that's fair. So thanks, Greenville. Going on next, Chattanooga Red Wolves, which, as much as they are kind of equal to Fuego for being kind of the doormat of League One. Part of that is Chattanooga FC stuff. Part of that is Red Wolves are weird at times. I really like their off season. Like, I really like their off season.
Right there with you. Yep.
I mean, I don't know. The biggest thing for me with Red Wolves is you bring in players who've played here before. You bring in players who are really good at this level. I mean, might as well just say it. I mean, Ricky Ruiz is, I mean, he was what, led the league in assists when last time he was in League One, and he was a kind of a star for a bad RGV team. Like,
he was the most consistently exciting player on the most boring team in the USL.
That's a star. Sure. But like, you're bringing in these players, it all works. And from everything that you see from preseason, which, as we all know, preseason and friendlies mean absolutely everything. Rapapa Mensah, early on, looks like he could be the player we thought he would be when he was younger in the league. And a lot of that could be through Ricky Ruiz opening him up. I like what they've done in the back line. I like what they have done in the attack. I'm a big fan of them. I think stupid cat. I think that they are I think they are going to be a lot higher than 6th unless it all just falls apart. I see them as a kind of an easy top 4.
This was the team that had the worst defense in the league by a mile. Some of that comes down to Avilés. Some of that comes down to the center back core or the lack of protection in the midfield. Chattanooga has gone out and fixed those issues, made that the priority. So you get Leo Fola coming in from Northern Colorado, a proven quantity at center back. You're getting Gustavo Fernandez at the other center back spot, somebody who, again, proven quantity, was on the title-winning team in North Carolina. Getting Tim Trillick back in net, huge deal. Somebody who's proven in League One, very good within the 11 when he was able to get time after an injury there. You can't say enough about having that baseline if you're Chattanooga. This is a team that's not going to be a pushover at the back. Then looking forward upfield, you've got Ruiz. Mensah was somebody who scored 4 goals in their final 5 games last season. And then supplement him with Malai Malongo, Jonathan Felipe, who both caught fire at the end of last season. I tend to think that what they were doing when they started scoring goals at the end of 2023 is pretty replicable. So you throw in Ruiz, you throw in the fact that they're not going to be giving up stupid ones at the other end. There's a real possibility that you're getting back to the Red Wolves team that made the championship game in 2022. Like, I think they're for real. It's tough to say that, like, yes, they're nailed on to top 4 just because it's so competitive up top, but I think they're definitely going to be in the mix for it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of getting caught up in the moment when saying like, oh, easy top 4, because it is hard, but I think there is a lot here to like. I think that they have had a great offseason, like we've said. And you mentioned the team that made it as runner ups in League One. I think people should go back, and if you want to see some of the most exciting League One games, like we talked about Tormenta last year, 100 goals scored, 100 goals against, that kind of thing. That was legitimately Chattanooga 2 years ago, where every game was 5-5, every single one. They had a relentless press that did not stop for the entire 90 minutes, and it was fun. And like you mentioned, this is all about is it replicable? And that's one thing I've said about friendlies, and it's the big thing that I've been just trying to really push. Friendlies are not for results, they're for process. Everything about your process should be good. And everything I'm seeing from Rebels, and friendlies are friendlies, but it all looks repeatable, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, and their game against Atlanta from last weekend was streamed. They were running with the 4-2-3-1 where they ended at the end of last year. They had put in just better players into that same consistent system. I really believe in what Scott McKenzie's building there. Like, huge fan. And I think outside of a team that we'll get to at the top of the table, Chattanooga is probably the most improved team in the league.
Oh yeah, for sure. Unless you have anything else on Rebels, which we did get a fun question. Do they have to change their name? Still, I I don't know what's happening with that, but I there's a soccer wars chaos part of me that says I hope so.
Can I just say that I think a new brand would be good?
I
Like,
mean,
outside of meme reasons.
we made we made the pencil graphic design is my passion
This
meme
is
because of
true.
them. I don't think that is a thing to say that they should have a new brand anyway, but there's also a part of me that wants to hold on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't fault you there, but like, I think just everything about that club getting a refresh maybe wouldn't be bad.
No. Let's go ahead and move on to Northern Colorado, which I've I've liked what Northern Colorado has done, and I'm going to tread softly because I don't want to end up with a bookmarked tweet from Mr. Zayed. Um, I love you. Um, but also, they have the hardest job right now in replacing not one, but two of the best players in the league last year. And I don't really care who you are. You can't just do that. Maybe you can do like the Moneyball thing that Phil kind of brought up several times in the championship preview last week. Maybe you can replace them through the aggregate, but you can't just one for one the players that you lost. So I'm going to be interested to see where's the fall off.
I think if you're a Northern Colorado fan, the reason to be bullish is that you've got enough weapons that you don't have to have that same star-centric, heliocentric system that was so successful last year. Like, running through Arthur Rogers and Trevor Amon, no team would pass up that opportunity. But if you think about the fact that they've now got Isidro Martinez in that midfield, they're going to get a whole season of Danny Robles. Those are two players with creative capabilities. You're going to get the full year of Noah Powder and Bruno Rendon on the right wing. Tons of permutations of how you weaponize them and really get production. Real Hill is somebody who they signed, I think, from Trinidad, if I'm remembering correctly, who's got a lot of attacking potential. Ethan Horde is a forward they signed, college kid. He stood out because he scored a first half hat trick in one of their friendlies, and they just immediately signed him to a deal. That's somebody that you can think of as like an upside piece. Moreover, like, defensively, going and getting David Garcia, keeping Lalo Delgado in net, there's going to be baseline defensive competence that we can't overlook here. Personally, I have Northern Colorado getting back into that top three. I see why the fans writ large are a little bit more skeptical. But I trust Zayed. I trust the vision, and I think this squad has the goods to kind of maintain that level that they reached last season.
Players to kind of, for me, Dietrich, I think is going to be a massive. If Northern Colorado is going to go, he's going to be a main reason for that. You mentioned him before, Jake Keegan. Like, it's hard for you to find someone who is more highly renowned in League One circles. He's all about the cardio. He can do it. He's about it. Um, it's one of those things that I completely understand being very bullish on this team. And yeah, Ethan Howard looks great. Looks absolutely fantastic. I think this is a situation for me where I just believe, like you mentioned, in Zayed.
Yeah.
I know that they have talent, and you look at the names and you're like, oh, I didn't realize how good it was. Because there was a part of me that went into researching all this that I was like, yikes, like what's left, right? Because there was a part of me, and this is about to be kind of rude, but also we said last week, I thought this may have been a little bit of an Orange County situation of Noah Losky, what's going to happen? Like what is the answer with Noah Losky? And, but that's a later conversation or last week conversation. But I was going into Northern Colorado thinking the same thing. And I was pleasantly surprised with, the answers are already kind of there. It's not going to be as big of a drop off as I thought. Noah Powder, by the way, if you have not watched Noah Powder when he gets a good run, my word.
Powder and Rendon, I know I said it, but that pairing on the right, you're not going to get a single team with a better combination on one side of the field. That's going to be tremendous. That's going to force defenses off balance. And you mentioned, like, if you look into the players that they've added, you could make an argument for like 9 different midfielders to earn starting minutes at some point. There's enough creativity and balance here that I have no doubt that Hailstorm is going to be very solid once again.
Because I can never keep up with things. Let me go over to Chattanooga Red Wolves. Mostly confidence. They believe that strikers their biggest strength. The biggest weakness is central midfield. They're mostly confident Scott McKenzie, and they believe that they're going to host playoff matches. Now, Northern Colorado, their fans, if I can scroll to them, said they are completely confident, except for one person. One person said that they are only mostly confident. Hater. They believe that central midfield is their biggest strength, which, yeah. They believe their biggest weakness is center back, which I guess when you put everything into context, if you say, if you're comparing the whole team based on its, on itself, what's the biggest weakness? I guess you could say center back. I want to give a hot take. Delgado stopped a lot of penalties, but that doesn't make him a great goalkeeper.
I will say that I'm all in on the Lalo Delgado experience, but I take your point in stride. Like, I think that's a fair thing to say about his game.
I mean, yeah, I feel like, if they can just figure out how to not foul in the box, I feel like weirdly Delgado loses value. And I don't want to say that that's a thing that Zayed tells them to do, because that would be a ridiculous thing to tell someone to do. Like, hey, if it was like they're going to score, just wipe them out. Delgado would save it. But it almost felt like it was more likely he was going to save it at times from the spot than open play. It was bizarre. I'm just not fully in. I'm not fully bought into that, but I don't know. I don't know if it's enough for me to call him a weak link because I think that's unfair too. But I don't know. Maybe that's just what happens when you're a possible top 3 or 4 team.
Justice for Lala. All I got to say.
And then everybody except for one person said they are very confident in Zayed. And almost everybody says host playoff matches. One person said that they are just going to make the playoffs. Next up, sweep the legs. Just do it. Or don't. Please keep people safe. Ford Madison. Ford Madison last year was my seriously look at their back line. Their back line is ridiculous. This is the best defense in the league. And then, well, Union Omaha decided to go nuclear, which was fun to watch. But I still stick with it. Ford Madison is, I still think, is on paper right now is the best back line in League One. And Cheney is back after posting a thing that says, "Thank you, Ford Madison. Thank you, Madison. You're forever in my heart." And by forever in my heart, I mean I'll be back next year. That was weird. I like what Ford Madison brought in this year. I think they kept in the right pieces. My biggest question mark, and I kind of hate to keep doing it, but we talked about the level of goalkeeping in League One. And I feel like Shipman might be the worst offender of that. And that just seems awful. But there were at times where it was just like, you expect your goalkeeper at times to bail out the back line. That's their job. And there were times where it felt like they stood on their head and he let in a weird one. And it felt like it happened a lot of times in a bad time. And maybe that a part of that's just going to be getting another year as a professional, and this year's going to be better learning what this backline is going to be.
By like my goalkeeping numbers, he was somebody who was slightly above average, which feels about right on balance. Like by and large, he's not costing you points. And I think when you've got the shielding of that back line and you're bringing back at the center back spot, at least, Kroll, Osman, and Mel, adding in Michael Chilaka, who finished the season with San Diego Loyal and has a killer resume. Like, I think he got starter minutes in Israel, if I'm remembering right.
I think that sounds right to me.
So I'm just gonna like throw it out there that I think Madison is the best team in the league. Like I'm all in on what this unit has. You think about those defenders, they pretty much built for a back three. Stephen Payne at right wing back, we wax poetic about him all the time on the show. He's somebody that both you and I think is fantastic. Getting Faraday Sosa back, somebody who won a title in Omaha, didn't get a ton of run in all honesty in Sacramento, but was largely fine. But like at the League One level, couldn't ask for a better option on the left. It's the midfield where I am so happy with what they did. Getting Jimmy Villalobos, who's one of the best kind of 8-10-ish players you can get. Devin Boyce, track record precedes him in a sort of similar role. John Murphy, somebody who I really like to watch play as well. Then you're keeping Bartman, you're keeping Macias. That's 5 midfielders for 3 spots, the way I'm thinking about this team, and all of them are very, very good. Then Cheney and Galindras up top found money. Like that's a pair of strikers that could easily hit 25 goals between them. I just don't see an obvious flaw in Madison. Like unless something goes really wrong with injuries, they feel top 3 to me at a minimum.
Well, this is what I was kind of talking about before. Of biggest flaw, biggest weakness is is like it's kind of relative, right? And to me, you're talking about how Shipman isn't costing you points, but he also isn't winning you points, right? And the rest of the roster is going to get you 3 points at some point. There's at some point where Cheney's going to get a hat trick, probably in Central Valley, because he's going to have an entire fan base there. That's going to happen. The back line's going to stand on their head at some point. That's going to happen. The midfield is going to get you 3 points. Shipman is not going to cost you points, but is he going to get you 3? Last year, we didn't see it. This year, maybe he makes the step. And, this is what's always hard about previews is because you're always kind of looking backward and trying to project forward is hard. In relation to this team, I think he's the weak link. But if you were to drop Shipman in Central Valley Fuego, I might be trying to sell you a different story. I might be telling you how, hey, maybe they can get a few points and sneak to that playoff line. I think it's all just kind of in context. I mean, I'm with you. Ford Madison is my 1 to 2, kind of depending on where I am that day. I love what Ford Madison is. Brees, when it's popping, is just unreal. I I love the team.
Yep. This just feels like the year that they've really put together a roster that's enough to kind of get over the hump that they've never quite been able to leap over in the table. So, yeah, couldn't be higher on Madison.
Some from Mike Zay, who says they Madison will make the playoffs, but they're not top 4 material until they prove it. Fair. Previous seasons, they have shown they give up too much in the later half of the season. I also think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first year they've had the same coach for back-to-back years.
That sounds right to me. And I'm also high on Glacier while we're putting that out there.
Yeah, so I think a little bit of consistency, because in years past it was okay. They go to what everybody kind of knows is eventually fire their coach, because that's what they did. And everybody just, I don't want to say gave up, but it was like, well, if the coach isn't going to be here, they're probably going to get rid of me because the new coach doesn't want me anyway. I I can see how it happens. Last year was a little inexplicable, but also there were a lot of teams last year that went absolutely nuclear. I mean, we talk about Lexington, Omaha, and Charlotte was just kind of good all year long, except for a couple of stretches. Those are in Northern Colorado. Those are 3 to 4 teams that just seem like they just would never lose again at the end of last year. So I don't think that's necessarily fair for Madison last year when they were having to compete with that. I don't know. I believe in this Madison team, but I also believe it's fair to say that they're not top 4 material until they prove it. I mean, I think there is a prove it part of this. I think there is, like, you can put whatever you want on paper, but if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Well, that's where going and getting Villalobos, who helped carry Chattanooga to the final game. That's where Devin Boyce, who's been on playoff teams for fun for years on end. Murphy with great experience. He has a brother, and I can't remember which one was really good for Red Bulls too. He might be him. I know he played for Tormenta and was, again, in solid teams with a real culture. Just those 3 players alone are bringing in something that matters for Forward Madison. And I think that's part of what's informing my feeling that, yeah, this is the team that can finally kind of reach the expectations that everybody in Madison has been hoping to get.
For sure. Let's go ahead and go on to Charlotte, where Charlotte is kind of running it back, and it's not a bad idea. They they made it to the finals last year and are a penalty save away from winning it. Like, it's not a bad idea. You bring in Hugh Roberts, who, as we all love around here. They keep Joel Johnson. Spielman, arguably the best center back in the league last year. Pack, who I don't think you can argue, he definitely was the best goalkeeper in the league last year, unless I'm forgetting somebody.
Numerically, at least, yeah.
Yeah. I think that you're bringing in a lot of talent. I think you have your talent here. There's a lot of fun stuff on the way with this team. The name that I want you to look at is Omar Sis. Kid is insane. When he is a midfielder, central midfield, defensive midfielder, whatever you want him to be, if you want him in the central midfield, he'll go do it for you. You want him to go up and, get some killer balls throughout the middle, connect the play, great. If you want him to be a defensive stud, he can do it. And he's only 22. Like, he's going to be what makes this team go. He's going to be the connecting bit. And that's assuming he starts, because the rest of the midfield is also ridiculously good.
He got 2,700 minutes last year. Like, he's somebody, given the layout of this team, who's really going to have to be the anchor in the defensive midfield spot. The thing with Charlotte that's so interesting is that if you look at the fact that they were pretty solidly 4th place, like there was a double-digit point gap between them and last year's top 3. By expected goals, Charlotte was a team that was below water. Like they had a negative expected goal difference. They were one of the bottom 5 teams in the league. On talent, when you think about Joel Johnson, Gabriel Obertan, Miguel Ibarra, this team should be better than that. They're trusting the process that what we saw in the playoffs is the real Charlotte independence. There are worries, to be certain, like losing Corey Bennett to the Lights, losing Dane Kelly to no team yet, but it's Dane Kelly, and just trusting that Tresor Mbuyu is going to move over from the wing role and take over as the number 9. That's expecting a lot from somebody who certainly has the talent to do the job, but isn't a sure thing. Bringing in what they did today and getting Anton Sorensen, somebody who has been in the Philly Union system forever, to be their left back, really inspired pickup. He fills a position of need, but that still leaves the striker hole. So Charlotte defensively is going to be really stout. I worry about the aging and the consistency up top, but if Sis can do the job and the defense holds, they're at least going to grind their way into a good position. And I think they've got as much upside as anybody when you think about title contenders.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another, like I said, this is a team that you could just see just kind of doing it again. I understand that it wasn't what to his standard, and not maybe we should be having the conversation that we were talking about with Terzaghi, which more real with Dane Kelly, but the Father Time is undefeated, but also so is Dane Kelly. Like what did he end up? How many goals did he end up with last year? Was it 8? Some around there.
Yeah, it's something very solid like that because Dane Kelly don't miss. Yeah, 8 goals and 5 assists in like 1,800 minutes or so.
Because Dane Kelly, that's why. I
mean, he's inevitable. He's the Thanos of USL strikers.
And the thing is that it weirdly feels like every Dane Kelly goal is the same. And have you ever seen? And this is already getting way off topic, but have you seen the video of Ovechkin getting all of his goals, and they're all just the same?
Office. Yeah,
it's just always the same place, and it always feels like it's Dane Kelly thing. It's like, why doesn't anybody just stand there? Why does anybody just ever just get in his way? Every goal is the same, but yet he does it, and it's always just impressive to watch. And if you're relying on Dane Kelly to be a bench piece, I think you're doing okay.
Well, he's not back. That's the thing. Like
he will. He's going to be back.
That I know. That's what's frustrating about this Charlotte team is that they just like refuse to play the PR game. And I know in my head that he's going to be back, but it's kind of DEFCON if he's not, because that striker position has no depth right now.
Oh, for sure. That I'm all in on baseball right now. Spring training's back, so I'm like, that's where my brain is. Dane Kelly's my Clayton Kershaw. Like, he was always going back to the Dodgers. Dane Kelly's going back to Charlotte. He's not just the only way I don't see him going back to Charlotte is if he retires.
And I mean, that's a real worry given the fact that he's been around the block for more than a few years.
You would think he would have announced that by now, right?
I would assume, but weirder things have happened.
Yeah, fair. Fair enough. All right, let's go ahead and go over to our number 2, Union Omaha, who, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what to do with this Union Omaha team. Every single signing they make, I'm like, whoa, that's a great signing. I love that. They're bringing back players that were fantastic for them. They're bringing in some of the best college talent that you can find. They're bringing in League One, long timers who've done it in the past. And yet there's still a part of me that just isn't sure. And I just can't help but wonder if part of it is the fact that they burned so hot last year and then lost several of those pieces that they just can't replicate it. But do you have to replicate to do that? Because if you're just consistently good throughout the season, you don't have to go, what was it, 14 unbeaten?
Something like that, yeah.
So you don't have to do that if you're consistently good, but I don't know. Some just throw me off.
When you look at what they've lost, I think that's a natural reaction, right? Like Connor Doyle, JP Scarce, Joe Brito, Shaft Brewer, Louis Seal, Alexis Swahi. You put those players together, that's a playoff team automatically. Like you could just
Yeah.
put the USL show cast next to them, and that's a playoff team. But at the same time, like look at what they're keeping with Nuhu and Net, Dos Santos up top. You're keeping Dion Akoff. Kunga, who came on strong at the end of last year, is going to be key again. The additions have been interesting. It's a lot of USL Championship guys on top of what you mentioned. And at that, players who are veteran, arguably over the hill in the case of Michak Jerome and PC, but guys that, at least in PC's instance, he has so much intelligence.
He's
You
like
think he's constantly injured, and he's been around since the NASL, which makes me think like he must be ancient. He's 29 years old. If he is a step slower, he is so smart. He's going to sit at the base of the midfield and let this team do their job. I think that what they did earlier this week in getting Ryan Jiba back is going to be huge at left back. Like that's a guy who earned an MLS move because he was that good, and you never see that out of League One. Aaron Gomez up top, somebody who Dom Casiato knows from their El Paso days together. He's a striker that I thought was going to start somewhere in the championship, so that's a real coup for them. Even if I think this is going to be another year where they start slowly, and this time it's because they've had so much turnover. But on talent alone and the way that that talent fits into the system that put them to the top of the table last year, it feels like Omaha is going to be a team that I expect to get a home playoff game. Like I wouldn't be shocked if they're a little bit lower or higher either way, but they're going to be very, very good once again.
Yeah. I just don't know what, and I know I said it, I just don't know what to make of it. Because, like you mentioned, you lost a playoff roster, like straight up a playoff team, a possible title winning playoff team, just going other places, whether it be around the league or moving up or, neutral or lateral across. That's a lot. I also think that in the end, we talk about people who can bail people out. Nuhu, we mentioned Austin Pack being the best goalkeeper in the league numerically. I think anybody who's watched Nuhu will tell you that he is the 1A. He is the 1-1. If you're going to build a team around the goalkeeper, I feel like Nuhu is almost unanimous. You do that. You get that guy. I think about the one match he had against Ford Madison. It might have been their first meeting last year, where he had like 3 or 4 just point blank saves that just made no sense. And I said, surely a championship or even an MLS team is going to buy him. And then Union Omaha hit him with an extension. And I was like, what's going on? And I feel like if you're going to rely on someone to stand on their head and kind of keep a season afloat, Nuhu's your guy.
No, without a doubt. Like he's somebody who can be a real difference maker. And given that it's probably going to be Jiba and Akoff at the fullback spots, like they're not going to leave themselves a whole lot of protection. He's going to have to do a job. Moreover, like is Michak Jerome going to start? Because you're iffy on him defensively. Blake Malone hasn't really shown that he's like that solid as a nailed on League One starter. So I'm not 100% at center back for them, but Nuhu, like he gives you the confidence that they're going to be okay defensively.
Yeah. Anything else on Omaha?
Good on Omaha.
Let's go over to Lex Ride, Lex Go, whatever their hashtag actually is, and Lexington SC, Sporting Club of Lexington, Kentucky. There is a lot here. This is kind of a championship team in League One. That said, I am not as bullish as a lot
I
of
can't
fans
believe that we're the same with like all of these opinions. It's crazy.
it's one of those things that I look at this team and I say, this is good, this is good, this is good. But there are holes. Their top end talent is some of the best in the league, but there are holes. And I don't know what to do with it. And maybe I'm just kind of not there right now. Maybe I just need to get with it. But I'm not sold on the central midfield. I think it's good. I think there are pieces, or just the midfield in general. There are pieces, but I'm not sold on it. You obviously love what you're getting out of your striker position, but like who, and there are obvious answers on who's going to get them the ball, but we'll see. Defensively, there are names. There are names that I really like, but where are they in their career? Right? The biggest one, Corrales. I love Corrales. I think he is one of the nicest guys, and he is a real talent. He is someone who probably could still be playing in the championship if he wanted to find a job, but he wanted to go be probably with a contender in League One. But what is he as a player? Same conversation we can have about Cameron Lancaster, the big marquee signing that everybody's so excited about. He's not your 3 years ago Cameron Lancaster anymore. I think there's a little bit of one knock syndrome last year where people saw the names of championship yesteryear getting signed and said, oh my God, one Knox is going to win it all. And then they were not good. I think Lexington's a lot better than that. I want to make that very clear. I think one Knox is a lot better than that. Their standard, their base is a lot better than what one Knox had last year. There's still a lot of question marks.
For me, like, if you're thinking about the defensive unit, which has really been one of the focuses of the rebuild, right? Like, they brought in 6 or 7 new defenders. You're still going to be relying on Amal Knight to do the job. And by the way, let's plug Glove of the Game.
Please. Yeah.
Because amazing stuff. Yeah. Check out the Patreon. Check it out on YouTube now. Amazing. Just him talking through a performance. But again, like the mentality that he showed in that's why he's an elite goalie and somebody who's going to have to step up big to make sure this team has the margin of error to experiment. And ditto for Kalen Fox as well, somebody who in that back line, like he's one of the holdovers, and I think he's probably the best defender they have. Ebenezer Akon is somebody who everyone thought was going to be a starter for San Diego, and he never could stay healthy. He's not had a healthy season where he's played legit like 30 games since 2019. Modesto Mendez is somebody with a lot of athleticism, a lot of upside. Too often he lets the instincts get ahead of him. Last year he played in an Inter Miami 2 team and a Hartford team, both of whom were almost dead last in goals allowed. There's a reason for that. Corrales, again, a guy I love. He's not going to be an end-to-end left back at this day and age. By all accounts, Lexington probably wants to use a back 4. He's built to be a center back and a back 3 at this point in time and really distribute from that role. So I think a lot of question marks at the back. In the midfield, you're more confident just because like Tate Robertson's going to be whipping it in from the wing. What you're getting from Brown, Loera, Pierre Mane is a nice player as well. I like what they're getting from Jaden Onan coming over from Madison. I feel like just the talent level is enough. They've got enough pieces with enough tools that they can find a mix. Up top, I'm with you on Lancaster. I think that he's not going to be the player that he was. But when you think about Ates Diouf and the way that he's developed, you think about Azad Liadi, who no one's talking about but can really get the job done. They're going to be good. So the question to me then becomes, can the defense hold? And who's going to be that real initiator who steps up and links play with those forwards? So I ultimately think that Lexington is a playoff team. I don't think they're top 3. I could see them getting a home playoff game, but I think a lot would have to go right.
Can I give you a fun storyline for this team?
Do tell.
Mendez, you mentioned him. He's a guy who he has all the talent in the world. maybe the mentals aren't as developed yet. Well, guess who's probably going to be a center back with him, who's also played for the same national team as him, Corrales.
There you go.
That's just a natural mentor. Not only someone who is there that is a countryman, they might go on international duty together. Like that is,
Wait, didn't they both like defect?
I think they can still go back.
Okay, yeah, me speaking out of ignorance there.
I think they can because I think they got rid of that for baseball. I think they did the same because I know Corrales played last year. I don't know. Either way, yeah, someone correct me on that. But I mean, either way, like this is still two guys who have shared the pitch, at least shared training ground on the international level together. Now there's going to be
No, for
guys
sure.
that are going to be together during training. And is there anybody else really across the league that you can think is a better person to teach you how to be a professional, how to build the intelligence than Corrales? I don't know. I want to peel back the curtain a little bit. We have a private the USL show chat, like for the host, so we can talk about like what we're planning. And we talk about like, hey, what do you think of this player? Like, I know a little bit about this guy, but what is this? You know, what can I get some outside opinion? And our good friend Tyler Crane from Crane Kicks Lex, check that out. He would send messages about roster signings for Lexington, and I feel like we've all given every single one of us gave an answer of some variation of, oh, he's a center back, and we did that at least 5 times.
Yeah.
Like, I this team, they have center back depth, but they're also definitely built for a back three, like you mentioned. Uh,
Yeah.
eh,
So let me correct the record on the Cuban situation here.
okay,
Corellis was part of a camp in, I think, 2016, 2015, where 5 different players, including Ariel Martinez, who USL fans would know, all defected. Corrales did not. He was able to work out a move to the NASL, but maintain the ability to be an international player. Now the barriers have come down to an extent. So Mendez is A-OK. But yeah, combined, they have more than 90 appearances between them. So that's really cool.
I mean, does Corrales have a future in like politician? I mean, dude just stuck around and negotiated his way to America and still got to play for the national team.
He's also just like the coolest guy. Like, I think that's something we're probably underrating, that when you bring in Corrales and Cameron Lancaster, like, what more leadership could you want there?
True. Yeah, I mean, for sure. You have a lot of young players here. I mean, Cano is probably the one that Lexington fans and Lou City fans are going to shove at you, be like, you know, here we are. He's a fun young talent. I mean, why not have a Cam Lancaster tell you how to be a professional? Why not have Cross tell you how to be a professional? I mean, that is a big part. Fox, you know, like Keegan
Yeah.
Fox is another one that, like, hey, here's how you're a professional. Yeah, Corrales and Mendez both caught up for Cuban national team groups in October. How about that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that is an interesting side of this, and that's an interesting conversation. I'm not bullish on them being first this year. I'm with you on that. But if you also told me that it all clicked and they were running away with League One, I don't think I'd be shocked by that either.
I'm just hesitant to look at that roster and say, like, that's a championship team. Like, that feels like a team that you would have built in the championship 4 years ago. And the way that things are being done now is a little different. That's not to say that I think that they're bad or that there were mistakes made in the roster build. Like, there's still a ton of talent and you can see the vision. But I just think the balance is a little bit off right now.
Yeah. Well, look, that is League One. That was every team. There's a lot of fun conversations here, and I don't really think there were many teams that we really just said they're bad or hopeless. And that's kind of the same as the championship preview. I think there was only like one or two teams that were just like,
Miami FC, congratulations on being your own category.
yeah, I'm sorry, the Miami. Your kits are nice though.
The
Yeah, can't forget the trademark. Suck at Ohio State. Um, but I I'm very impressed with what League One has done this year. I think that for a league that has quickly become one of my favorite watches, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever it was that I officially joined the USL show, and I was just like, let's go ahead and just like start watching this because like I kind of watched it but kind of didn't. Like, let's actually get into this and watch it. I didn't realize how addictive League One was. And if you're a championship person who has not given it a chance, do it. Just do it. I promise you, you're going to love it. It's a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of players from yesteryear, and there's going to be some players that you're going to see next year too. Like, it is a fun area of there's great talent that will be here, and there's just like, oh, I remember when he played for my team. I remember when he played for my rival team, and it's just a fun mix of the two. And I think you would have a blast watching League One.
Another thing to be excited about and won't linger too long is that we've got the in-season cup this year, which is
Yep.
such a new and fun format. If I'm taking a swing, Greenville's winning that thing. Like, their brand of soccer is built for that sort of competition. So putting my flag down on that one.
That was always my biggest thing whenever Union Omaha kept going on runs too. And that was back when they didn't have like super crazy striker and like the kind of post Hurst era, like after that happened. Um, that was my thing with Union Omaha, is like how they keep making cup runs, like because their defense is ridiculous. And you don't need to score to win in the US Open Cup. You just need to survive for 120 in PKs. Like, that's how you advance. I think the same thing is going to work for the in-season cup. I'm excited for the in-season cup. Get it together, championship owners. Just join the cup. It's fun.
I think that the championship owners aren't actually hesitant. They just wanted to like give it 1 year to let it be a thing and see how it worked, just based on what I've heard. But which makes sense. I'm just excited for this thing to really get fleshed out.
I think there's a fun part of this too, where if you aren't a part of League One circles, like on Twitter, you mentioned natural rivalries. League One Twitter is both as fun, but also can be as toxic as any part of Twitter I've ever seen. League One Twitter can get about as nasty as it can get. And you best believe that if somehow it comes down to Union Omaha and Greenville for an in-season cup, that is going to be must like watch Twitter like sphere, and also just must watch just obviously the match itself. But I mean, just some natural rivalries that build up, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a sort of camaraderie in the whole League One community that you don't quite get in the championship, and it's just a really fun thing to be a part of. So I'm glad we went deep on it.
Yeah, me too. By the way, thank you to Spokane Soccer Show for saying best primer podcast for someone who knows nothing about any of these teams. We really appreciate that. We appreciate you and all that you are doing. By the way, if you haven't checked out Spokane Soccer Show, really good stuff, really fun. That's a lot of League One talk. A lot of League One talk. Do you have any other USL thoughts?
Just like, I've written so many words about the championship at this point. Like, I've got it all out there. So just, take the one easy step and just like go to my Twitter account and like see what I wrote. Like, I'm just kind of brain dead until Saturday.
Yeah, take your time. Rest. Please rest for us. Yeah, it's super good. It was super good reads too. I'm a big fan.
Hit it.
Hashtag
Even
subscribe.
if I mean to Birmingham, because I don't know what to do with Birmingham.
I don't either. I don't know what to do with that. What? I don't know. It's bizarre is what it is. I like it, but it's weird. Whatever.
I think they're going to be fun at worst.
That's all I ask. Final thoughts on the night for you?
Yeah. But you know what? I never shut up books. I do like to read. I just read a thing about like epidemiology in the Roman Empire that ruled. It was such a good book. And I did a double major in history showing up. I've moved on to a sci-fi book called Solaris. It's been adapted into like multiple movies over the years. I think it was written by like a Soviet guy in the 60s. It's weird and the ocean is alive, but I'm digging it.
Yeah, speaking of books, I told you I've been on a baseball kick lately.
Yeah.
And by baseball, baseball is still my favorite sport. Sorry, soccer people. I just love everything about baseball. I just love that weird stuff happens. And I just got done reading Showdown at Rickwood, which is all about like early 1900s baseball, and it
That's
is
how
a
you.
blast because they aren't. I don't care if they were alive. They weren't real humans. None of them were real. Like they would throw 500 pitches a game, not just chew tobacco, they would just eat it. And then they would all just be plastered. And guess what? They'd have a great time, make a little money, go home. It was the early 1900s baseball. If you haven't just deep dove on any of it, just do it. It's a blast. So those are books that's a book I read.
You know about the thing about early baseball is that every single name is the most insane thing you've ever heard in your life.
There's a bit of that, but there's also if you go into any Major League Baseball team's Hall of Fame, there's 7 Speedies. They saw a guy that ran fast, they said Speedy, and every single lefty's nickname was Lefty because they'd never seen one before. Like,
That's so good.
love it. Look, hey, we are on almost an hour 40 into this. Let's not keep you any longer. Hey, check out our Twitter at the USL show because our normal in-season predictions are coming out. And I want to get ahead of this now. We don't predict every game. We pick our top 10 of each week. We don't want to predict every single game. We don't have time for that. So keep an eye on that. It's always fun to keep up with. John ran away with it all last year. Maybe someone could bring his reign of terror. I'm going to keep my rule of I will not pick draws, and I'm sure it will not bite me whatsoever. So, no. Thank you all so much for listening. I appreciate you all. We appreciate you all. Let's get ready for a fun season. And even though he was not here, here are the smooth, sultry sounds of Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.